Okay, this is vlog day 6. Let's get into it. Think about your favorite story. Just tuck that in the back of your head. Really lock down what that is. If you can't pick between a couple, maybe remember a couple. That's okay. In this video, I'm going to be rolling through a couple of the most iconic ones, the most culturally collective picks of best stories, movies, books, and we're going to talk about them because in some way, I'm going to argue that all of them are love stories. Now maybe you're confused and you're like, what? I picked a horror movie. I picked a high fantasy film. I picked a comedy. Whatever you picked, I'm going to argue that really what gives it life is the love story within. And I'm going to do that using two different methods, but in order to really grasp that and really to understand why that's valuable information, we have to answer the question, why does it matter? Who cares if they're love stories? What does that mean for me? Well, to answer that, I think that it's important to recognize that as writers, we want to create good stories. And if the best stories are the best stories because of the love stories within them, then understanding how love stories play into things like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars, Jurassic Park, and even Willy Wonka, that'll help us write good stories. That'll help us share stories that connect with people, that make a difference regardless of our genre. For me, I like fantasy, I like dark fantasy, but my stories, I would argue, are still love stories. So let's get into it. Why do I think every story is in some way a love story? The first big reason is because I think that the story we are all in, the collective human story, right? They talk about history being the story of humanity, I think ultimately is a love story. Now I realize there's a lot of dark moments in our history. I realize there's a lot of high moments that we can be thankful for. There's a myriad of genres. There are moments in our own personal lives, not even in the history of humanity, but in the history of myself, Kirk, or in the history of you, in which things have been comedies. Things have been romances. Things have been horror at times. Things have been tragedies. We've had a myriad of genres. But what I'm going to argue is the thing that loops throughout all of them, the thing that keeps the story going is actually the love story within. And that love story takes different shapes and forms. Maybe it's the love our parents had for us when we were little kids that kept us going as we developed. Maybe our coming of age story is what we were experiencing, but the undertones and the things that gave that a foundation were the love that we had within it. Same thing with romances. Obviously, that's pretty evidently love stories. But even in the horror stories, I just watched this movie, Abigail. This is spoiler warning. And in the movie, this group of criminals kidnaps a little girl and brings her to this mansion that they're supposed to hold her out for money from her father for, only to find out that she's a vampire. And actually, the person who paid to bring them there was her. And she intends to feast on all of them. So it's a horror story. It's a fantasy horror story. Everyone's dying left and right. And those are definitely the bones of the story. But the blood that runs through it, the thing that gives it life, is this main character. The reason she's agreed to do this isn't because she just enjoys kidnapping little girls, but it's because she has a little boy. And she wants to be able to care for him. She wants to be able to show up and be different in his life. And so there's a love story there. And even though we don't get to meet this little boy and it's peripherally there, it is the reason we root for her compared to other characters. And actually our love for the characters propels the story forward. If there's not something about them that we can relate to them with, then we lack a good story. And so again, love propelled that story forward. And I would argue that our stories, chiefly, in the middle of them, are love stories. On really good days and on really bad days. And when our story feels like it can't go any further, it's usually because we're wondering, where's the love? To quote the Black Eyed Peas, where is the love? I think that this is a reality we all face. I think we deeply yearn to be loved. We deeply yearn to see love on display, and that ultimately love is the thing that makes the world go round. Other considerations are important. I realize that. Not everyone always feels lovely. This is not an argument for how we should set up policies, anything like that. All I'm saying is that we chiefly live in a love story. So that's the big reason one that I would argue that all stories are love stories, is because they're all being pulled from the story that we're part of. But now let's take a look and let's make kind of an evidentialist argument through some of our big stories. So let's take a look at Star Wars. We'll look at the original trilogy, and what you have on the meat, the skin of it, what you're seeing with the bones is you have a space saga, you've got lightsabers, the Force, you've got strange little green aliens that can teach you how to become Jedi Masters. A lot of cool things, a lot of things that I love. There's that word again. But not in and of itself upfrontly a love story. But if you grow to know the story more deeply, what you come to find out is that one, Luke endures a tragedy, right? So he loses his family. They're literally burnt to a crisp by stormtroopers. And he determines that this is not going to happen to anyone else, not if he can help it. He's going to give his life towards making the world a better, safer, more beautiful place. Not just because he's like, I flipped a coin and that's what I decided to do, but it's born out of his love for the people he lost and for the people around him that he sees hurting. And so first you have that love component. That's one of the big reasons we root for Luke, but also Luke refuses to give up on his father, who is literally the bad guy in the galaxy, Darth Vader. And so again, we have a love story, a story of a son's love for his father and how that ultimately leads to the father's redemption. And so I would argue Star Wars is a fantasy. It's a sci-fi. It depends on how you classify that. I would say it kind of fits into both categories. You could make an argument for either one, but it's also a love story. And I'd actually say that the love story component is essential to Star Wars being a good story. Think about Lord of the Rings with me for a moment. I'm going to reference Samwise Gamgee. Why is Samwise the hero? He's not the strongest. He's not the fastest. He's not the smartest. He's not ultimately he's not the one who saves the race of mankind through many battles and skirmishes. Sam's a very small figure, quite literally, with a big heart. And the reason Sam, as Tolkien says, is the hero of the story is not because he's extremely capable and extremely skilled at the things he does, but it's because he loves so well. In fact, Sam's whole story arc is essentially like a love song to the Shire, to Rosie Cotton, to Frodo, and to the belief that there's some good in the world and that it's worth fighting for. And that's why we love Sam, because Sam is a lover. We love Sam because of the love story that he is caught up in and the love that he would give his life for. I think the same is true for Aragorn. I think he is a great example of a character who is, not toxically masculine, they would say. He's noble, he's strong, but he's a lover. He's not vindictive, he's not unnecessarily harsh. The hard choices he makes are born out of his love for his people, for Arwen, for the people around him, for his fellowship. Aragorn is a lover, and we follow his love story. Faramir makes this awesome comment. He says, I don't love the sword for its sharpness or the arrow for its quickness. I only love that which they defend. And I think that this is very true in Tolkien's writing, that the stories, although they're filled with war, are not just for the pleasures of war. They're actually about the love stories within. Even John Wick, which is very much an action film and very much about fighting and killing the enemy. I mean, the start of those movies, the premise of those movies is that they've taken the things that he loves. And this is his kind of vindication for it. And so in a way, I would argue again, like John Wick's a love story. It's about a love lost and the way that's impacted this man. In a way, he's going to shut down this crime family from being able to take anyone else's love. So again, think about your story. Maybe you're in the middle of writing a space saga. Maybe you're writing a horror. My question to you is have you given us enough love in that story that we want to root for someone? Because if you don't see how your story is in some way a love story, I think you're missing a crucial element, the personal element, the element that we all connect with. So let me know in the comments, in what way is your story a love story? In what ways are we rooting for your character? In what ways are we going to fall in love with your characters? Thanks for watching this video. Like and subscribe and click the next one. Thanks.